Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. This is Miss Lisa's Science and Math channel. And right now we're talking about biology. This class is primarily designed for homeschoolers, but if you like the way I explain things, come on in, join us. We are going through this book, Glencoe Biology, an Everyday Experience. Like, share, subscribe. I'm trying to get 1,000 followers so I don't have to record videos and then upload them. It will save me so much time if I could do YouTube Live. I have a goal. We're not there yet. We're over a quarter way there though. I've got more than 250 subscribers. Yay! All right, so last time we talked about simple animals. What do you think we're going to talk about this time? You're right, complex animals. Now, your book starts off with a picture of an elephant and a Daphnia, which is a kind of water flea, and both are considered complex animals, even though the Daphnia is only 1 millimeter big, which means it's as close as you could get 2 fingers together without touching. And but it's still considered complex. If you look at the picture, you can see that it has organs, it has organ systems, it has an eye, that it has things that make it more complex than those animals we were talking about last time, which were things like hydra and sponges and starfish, things that were much less complex. Well, did we talk about starfish? I think we talked about coral. I know that. So anyway, that was last time. So you need to be reading along in your book. And I also explained last time that I'm making these videos once a week, but you don't really have to do them once a week. And so like in particular, this chapter has some really good labs you might want to do. And you might want to add dissection to the living labs that are in the book. And if you do, you might want to take a little bit more time here. So just because, and same thing with last week. Last week we had a living lab with live earthworms. But if you wanted to take that extra time and dissect an earthworm, that's all right too. That you have some weeks that if a chapter seems interesting, it has a little more to it, like these chapters, then you might want to go ahead and take that time and take 2 weeks on a chapter. You can work at your own pace. You don't have to go 1 a week the way I'm going to release them. I want to get them done, get them uploaded, so I can go on to the next project I have. I have other videos I want to make. I want to go back and in particular make more chemistry and physical science videos. So when I finish all of these that I'm doing this year, I've already planned what I'm doing for next year. So I'm going to keep going at 1 a week, but you don't have to, because there's normally 40 weeks in a school year, and we're probably only going to do 30 chapters in this book. All right, so we're going to talk about complex invertebrates first. So remember, vertebrates have backbones, invertebrates don't. So the first section of kind of animals we're going to talk about are jointed-legged animals. And you think, I've got jointed legs, I've got a knee, it can bend, I have appendages, arms that can bend. Why am I not a jointed leg animal? Well, you're going to see. You don't have all the qualifications. They have more qualifications for a jointed leg animal than it has jointed legs. So jointed leg animals, they have a skeleton on the outside. Where's your skeleton? On the inside. They have bilateral symmetry, which means you can cut them down the middle. You can too. They have jointed appendages. You do too. And but they also have antenna and wings a lot of times. All of these are appendages. Legs, antenna, and wings are considered appendages. Appendages are things that grow off your main body. So this includes insects, spiders, and crayfish. It has more animal types than any other phylum. And over 80% of the known animals are in this category. So there are lots and lots of kinds of bugs. They have 3 body parts. They have a head, a thorax, which is like a chest, and an abdomen. So 3 parts to their body. And you don't. Your body is not like that. Their skeleton is on the outside. It's called an exoskeleton, and it's hard. And so on the inside, they're squishy. where we're hard on the inside and kind of squishy on the outside. So we're opposite from them. Their skeleton is also waterproof. And it's non-living. They can lose it. They'll grow. It's called molting. And they'll outgrow their skeleton and they'll crawl out of it and leave it behind. And so here in the South, we have lots of cicadas. And I had never seen a live one. I'd only seen their exoskeletons where they had molted for years. And then finally one time, I grew up in the city. I grew up near Atlanta, so we didn't have so many critters there as we do here out in the country. And I remember finally I was at a gas station. We were on a road trip and there was a live cicada. I was like, oh, and it had all kinds of bright colors on it. It was really pretty. And I was surprised. No, they looked like that. And I'd never seen a live one before, but it was interesting. But that would also be a joint-legged animal like that. There are 5 classes of joint-legged animals. Crayfish, shrimp, lobster, crabs, and fleas and pillbugs all belong to one. They're all aquatic ones. They all are either in water or in a moist environment. They have to have moisture. They have mouth parts that hold, cut, and crush their food. They have antennae. They have compound eyes for seeing, which means they have lots of lenses. You've seen like in cartoons and stuff where it's a spider and it's like looking through a kaleidoscope. That's what their eyes are like. Our eyes are not. We have simple eyes. We only have one lens per eyes. Most of these animals have 2 body sections. They only have a head and a thorax. The head, I said that wrong. The head and the thorax are fused, and then they have the abdomen. So their head and thorax are sort of one thing. And they have a bunch of legs. They have 5 pairs of legs for walking, a claw-like pair of legs at the head that grabs and holds food. And these animals are food for a lot of other animals and even people. People eat lobster, shrimp, and crabs. Now, I don't. I'm not a big seafood person. My family likes it, but we have some food allergies in my family, and my mom is very allergic to shrimp, and I think I've reacted to shrimp before. I've never been tested for it, but I've had a few reactions, and I do have other food allergies that I know. And then one of my kids is real allergic to shrimp, so I just stay away from it. It's like, it's not worth going into anaphylactic shock for that. I don't care how delicious it is. I'll just eat some regular old fish. So I don't eat shellfish because of food allergies, but when I've had it, I wasn't crazy about it anyway. It's not like some of my food allergies, the other ones that really tempt me. I'm allergic to lemons. That can tempt me. A good old lemonade, a lemon cookie, something delicious lemon, but shellfish, I can take it or leave it. I'll leave it. Okay, so our second class of these animals are the ones that you think of as spiders. It's spiders, scorpions, ticks, harvestmen, which is what your book calls granddaddy longlegs. They say also called daddy longlegs. I've always heard them called granddaddy longlegs, not just daddy longlegs. But each one has 4 pairs of walking legs, simple eyes, no antenna, and a body with 2 sections. So 8 legs. How many legs does a spider have? 8 legs. 8 legs. They feed on insects. Like spiders, spiders have a poison gland where they can bite you. Most spiders are not harmful to people. Even if you get bit, it's uncomfortable, but you won't die or anything. There are some that are quite harmful, though. There's black widows. There's brown widows. Did you know that? There's also, here in Georgia, we have brown recluses. Someone was telling me they knew a guy who got bit by a brown recluse on their leg, and they went to the hospital and they had to scoop out like a ice cream scoop amount of flesh. So then he had this big hole in his leg where they had to scoop it all out. Gross. And a long time ago, Billy Graham, the evangelist, almost died from a brown recluse bite. So they can be bad. So if you get bit, go to the hospital. Don't wait around. Anyway, another one is scorpions. They have their poison gland on their tail and can sting you. Some of them can be quite painful. Most of them around here aren't that bad. People I know who have been stung by them say it feels like a wasp sting, like extra, like more painful, maybe like a hornet or something. So it's painful, but it doesn't mean you're going to drop dead. The third and fourth class is Centipedes and Millipedes. Centi means 100, milli means 1,000, but centipedes don't really have 100 legs. They have about 30 usually, and millipedes have a lot. Centipedes can be fast and they can sting you, and it can hurt really, really bad. Millipedes can't sting you. They're smaller and more slow moving, and it looks like their little legs are moving in waves, where centipedes crawl fast and they're bigger and nastier. We've had them in our garage before. We've had black widows in our garage before too. Like I said, I live out in the country. Insects are the fifth class, and they are by far the most abundant animal on Earth. If you add up all the other animals together, there's still more insects than that. They live everywhere, all over the world. Insects have three main parts in their body parts. They have a head that has compound eyes. They also have three simple eyes. So that's so weird. It's really weird to me that they have not an even number. That they have two compound eyes and three simple eyes. Not two, not four, but three. That's just odd to me. It's like they're almost like little cyclopses in a way. They have a pair of antennae. They have several mouth parts. The thorax has 3 pairs of walking legs and usually 2 pairs of wings, so many insects can fly. They're the only invertebrates that can fly. They reproduce sexually. There are separate sexes, male and female, that produce eggs and sperm. The fertilized eggs are laid in large numbers on leaves and branches of plants a lot of times. They can be helpful or harmful. Helpful insects are like bees and that pollinate. Also, ladybugs are good at controlling other insects like aphids, but there are many very harmful insects like fruit flies, moths, termites. And remember last time we talked about malaria kills millions of people, and it is spread by mosquito. So, or is malaria the tsetse fly? Flies and mosquitoes can also spread disease. So you got to watch out. And we have other mosquitoes and things like that spread disease, especially here in the South. So your lab that you're going to do is on page 162, and it's with living crayfish. Now, I found a place that sells live crayfish, and they also sell seafood. So you can find them in places that sell seafood. There are certain times a year that they're hard to get. So you might have to put off this lab till later if you can't get hold of the crayfish, but you should do it because it's really interesting. Crayfish, you can look online for even more things to do with them, but they don't like certain colors shown at them. So if you put them up, shine a flashlight with a filter in front, they'll do their little claws and get all mad, go, and they fight. They'll fight the same sex, like females will fight females and males will fight males. They like certain surfaces more than others, so you can put them like on sandpaper, and you can do this with your worms too, your live worms. You put them on sandpaper, and and they'll change or you can put them on a smooth surface. There's one surface they prefer, so you'll discover that in your lab too. But when you get your live crayfish, you've got to put each one in a separate bowl, or else they will fight and kill each other, and you'll end up with no crayfish for your lab. We didn't know, and we just put them all together like in a cooler, and they were fighting, and they would rip each other's arms off and run around with it in victory. I got the arm! They were such mean little things, but it was funny, and we learned a lot about them, and they're interesting. So I highly recommend you doing the live crayfish lab that is in your book. And even if you have to talk to your seafood supplier and find out when they're going to have live crayfish and go back and do it later in the year, because it's worth it. They are funny little things. The other thing is, when I did it last year with my biology classes, I told them that I was going to use it for a lab, and they gave them to me for free. People pay a lot of money for like a crawfish boil. They're called crawdads, crawfish, crayfish. They're all the same thing. So your book calls it a crayfish. But anyway, tell them you're using it for a lab. They might give you a deal on them, but very interesting lab. I highly recommend you do it. Okay, so the next one is the spiny-skinned animals. Aha, here are our starfish, and they are complex animals because they have parts to them. And this is when you might want to dissect. I bought them last year for us to dissect in this biology class, but COVID hit and we didn't get to do them. So stinky little dead crawfish, but you can get them from homesciencetools.com. They sell them. So this includes the sea urchin, the starfish, the sand dollar. They're all part of the spiny-skinned animals. They have a radial symmetry. Also, they can regrow. They used to think that starfish were a nuisance, so sailors would take them and cut them in half to kill them and then throw the parts back, and they just can regrow. As long as there's part of the middle of the body, they can regrow into a starfish. So they were actually helping them reproduce instead of getting rid of them. They also can reproduce other ways, but they can reproduce that way. They have tube feet, which are like suction cups that make them stick to stuff, kind of like how a medicine dropper can stick to something. They also can reproduce sexually, and they do have separate sexes that produce egg and sperm. So there are male and female starfish. It's kind of interesting, isn't it? Okay, so next, and we keep getting more and more complicated, is vertebrates. And that's what we are. We are chordates, meaning we have a backbone, a spine, and chordates are ones that have at some point a tube like a spinal cord at one point of their life cycle. And so in general, the chordates are the most important for you. It's your pets, it's you, animals and food that you eat. If you eat animals, are all chordates. At some point they have a tough, flexible rod along its back. So chordates, like you, have an endoskeleton, which means our skeleton is on its inside. We are vertebrates because we don't just have a rod, we have a backbone. So we are a type of chordate called a vertebrate. Vertebrates have large brains, yes, large brains, well-developed senses, and are very intelligent, like us. The 7 vertebrate classes are Jawless Fish, Cartilage Fish, Bony Fish, Amphibians, Reptiles, Birds, and Mammals. And we are mammals. So, characteristics of fish. Fish are cold-blooded. Which means that they have the temperature of their environment. It doesn't mean that their blood's always cold. If they're in a hot area, their blood's hot. Their temperature is whatever the environment is. They breathe through gills. Now, this is something that kids always have wrong. They do not breathe H2O. They don't breathe water. They don't get the oxygen out of water. They get dissolved oxygen, O2, out of water. They breathe the same stuff we do, O2. But they get it out of water where we get it out of air. They do not breathe water. They breathe dissolved oxygen in water. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but it's one of the things that kids have a wrong idea about. Most fish have scales, but not all of them. Like catfish don't have scales. They have a line called a lateral line that runs down them that tells, it's a sensory organ that we don't have, that tells the current, it tells about water current to them. Tells about water movement. There are 3 different classes of fish in the chordate phylum. Is Jawless Fish, Cartilage Fish, and Bony Fish. So the Jawless Fish, they are kind of like leeches. They're lampreys, and they have sucking mouth parts. They attach themselves to other fish, and they suck out blood out of them. They attach to other fish, and they cut a hole, and they suck out the blood and body fluids. Isn't that gross? So they're parasites. They're parasite fish. Gross. The next one is cartilage fish. Those are sharks and rays. They don't have bones. They have cartilage. Lots of times, like sharks have sharp teeth, rows of teeth, and they don't just have one set of teeth like you do. Well, you have two, your baby teeth and your big teeth, but they're constantly making new teeth. And so like they bite and they lose their teeth and they just grow more. And they have tons of them. And that's why you can find sharks' teeth in the ocean so easily, because they're just constantly making them and losing them. Rays are flat. They live in the bottom of the ocean. Stingrays, and they can sting. The stings can be bad. And the book says it can be painful. It can even be deadly. We know from crocodile hunter Steve Irving, he got stung in the heart and it killed him. So when I was in college, I went scuba diving. I took this class in January, and one of the things we did is we went scuba diving. So I'm PADI open water scuba certified. But before we got out, swimming in the ocean and going to the coral reef, we just snorkeled. Step one is we snorkeled. No, we scuba dived. I was thinking about it. We went scuba diving in a little lagoon at the island. We were down in the Florida Keys, and I'm swimming around. The water's not very deep, and I'm scuba diving around in the water, and I'm swimming right over the bottom because that's what we were doing. And suddenly underneath you is shake, 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 and it's a ray is right underneath me. And I'm like, ah, because it's like inches away, and it just it looks like they look like they're flying. It just flies out. And then later we got to where they took us on a boat 3 miles out to the ocean, and we jumped off. You rolled backwards off of it, and we went down and went diving on a coral reef, and you would just see them flying by. It's so cool, so pretty, so amazing creatures, amazing sea creatures. I'm very glad I did that. It was very fun learning to scuba dive. I have some funny scuba diving tales, but we won't go there. All right. The next kind of fish is the bony fish, and that's what most of the fish are. They usually have scales, but you have like catfish that they're slimy and don't have scales. They have a swim bladder, which means that they have a place that they can have air to make it bigger and smaller, to make them go up and down in the water. And as a scuba diver, I did that. I had this little life jacket thing that was flat when I went into the water, and then I'd take my mouthpiece out, which is called a regulator, and I could blow in it, and it would puff it up, and then it would make me, they had too much weight on me the first time I went out in the ocean, and I went over, and I was skinnier than they thought, and I just went boom down to the bottom of the ocean. I'm face first in the sand, and like totally sandwiched under the bottom of the ocean. So first minutes of scuba diving, it's very scary to take your regulator out because that's your air, but you had to take it out and blow in that thing to get myself off the bottom of the ocean because I couldn't swim. I was, absolutely weighted onto the bottom. And then you have to put your regulator back in, and you can't breathe in. The first thing you have to do is blow out to get the water out of it. So I had to take a breath in with the regulator, take out my mouth, blow into the thing, but not all my breath, because then I put my regulator back in, blow out, and then I could take a breath. But finally I got it to where I could swim around and got pretty good at it. But I've heard of people having the same problem that I had and panicking and drowning because they were squished on the bottom, and then they breathed up all their oxygen and died. So I'm real grateful that I kept my wits about me and was able to get off the bottom of the floor of the ocean. But fish don't have to worry about that because they have a swim bladder where they can regulate their buoyancy by this organ that they have, perfectly created for their environment. So the next one is amphibians. This is your frogs, toads, and salamanders. Amphibian means that they spend part of their life cycle in water, like a frog starts off as a tadpole that looks like a little fish, and then they spend part of their life, or can spend part of their life, on land. They breathe air. They start off breathing with gills and take the oxygen out of water, but then later in their life they breathe air with the lungs. My kids did the thing where they had the aquatic frogs where you can buy them at a toy store, and we had them, and I got tired of cleaning their cage, so I decided, well, the cage, they were in a fish tank and they smelled terrible, so I decided to get, for a aquarium, you can put a filter on it, and then you don't have to clean it so much. So I went and bought a filter for our frog tank, and I killed them because by filtering it, it was moving the water too much. It got too much dissolved oxygen in the water, and they blew up and died. I over-oxygenated the water and killed the frogs. So then they were like, okay, Mom, we're just going to get a regular tadpole and grow it into a frog. So we had this tadpole, and we had bought the little habitat for it, and it looked like the Dagobah system from Star Wars. So it was this little Yoda tadpole, and then he crawled out, he got some legs, he was so cute, he still had a little bit of tail, and I went to go clean his habitat, and I picked it up, and it squished him on the bottom, and all his guts came out. I'm not to be trusted around frogs. I will kill them. So I felt terrible, and my boys were so mad at me for killing the frogs again. So that second frog, well, we had more than one aquatic frog, but this frog is buried out in my flower garden. I said, well, we can bury him under the rose bush. So at least he'll have a pretty romantic end for a frog. He's going to be buried under a rose bush. But anyway, so frogs are important. They eat flies. Salamanders are amphibians with tails. These are all cold-blooded, meaning they take the temperature of their environment, and they hibernate. And I didn't know. I told y'all I grew up in the city, didn't know about these things. We moved out to the country to Douglasville, and there were all these frogs, and then suddenly they were all quiet. And I was like, but you would hear the bullfrogs all summer long. And then in the spring, they all wake up at once. It's like the day the bullfrogs wake up, and it's so loud, and you've gotten used to there not being bullfrogs, and then they are so loud when all the bullfrogs wake up, and it's really neat. And before that, I didn't know bullfrogs hibernated. I didn't know that they all wake up on the same day and that they're so loud. So I had a lot of country living to learn about after growing up so near Atlanta. Where I grew up, it doesn't get dark. So because there's light pollution, the sky is always kind of light. And so like you might see one bright star or maybe two or a satellite through the light, but you don't really see stars. And I went to college out in the country, and I just could not believe. I'd go, look at the stars, look at the stars. And the other college kids were like, she's crazy. This person has made it to college without seeing stars. And I had never seen a shooting star until college, and I saw my first shooting star, and it's because I grew up in the city where we have light pollution and you couldn't see stars. We have pollution and light pollution, which you couldn't see the stars. The sky was always kind of reddish looking. Like at night, it was kind of glowy red. It didn't ever get dark. So I'd never seen that. And it's like, I guess I'd been camping and stuff. I just never bothered to look up and notice the stars until college. But anyway, you can feel sorry for me. All of you country people can feel sorry for the city girl who missed out on the bullfrogs and the stars growing up. So the next one is reptiles. Snakes are in that. A reptile has dry, scaly skin and can live on land. There are like sea snakes and stuff. It says in the book that reptiles were the first invertebrates to live and reproduce entirely on land. They don't know that. We don't have a time machine. We can't go back and tell that. And it is disputed among biologists. So just know there are no undisputed transitional forms among biologists. None. Biologists like to state things as a fact. That's their opinion. And then other biologists argue with them about it. So if you want to see the debates, it's between PhD biologists will argue about these things. And when you make statements about the past, they have to be speculation because we don't have a time machine. We cannot go back. We cannot make experiments to have it observable and testable. So just always know that sometimes books will tell certain things about the past as a fact and make it sound like there's no disagreement when there is. Biologists definitely disagree about some of these timetables. History of living things are things biologists who are in most agreement, they'll still disagree. And what they do is they will specialize, and their animal that they specialize in, they have very strong opinions about, and then other people will have strong opinions about that one, and those are the ones who fuss that are specializing in similar organisms, and they are both trying to make a name for themselves and get their paper published is what I have found to be true, but just to let you know. Reptiles are cold-blooded, which means that they take the temperature of their environment, which is really a good thing, because I live in the South where we have lots of snakes, and they can be a problem. There have been copperheads in my neighborhood. They are 6 feet long and as big around as my arm, and they will bite you, and you can die from a copperhead bite. And we have rattlesnakes, and we have coral snakes. We have a lot of poisonous snakes around here. And sometimes it's a pain, because sometimes you want to go running through the woods and you know that there can be a rattlesnake in those woods and you got to be careful. But we have very mild winters. Like in the winter, once it's been getting cold, then the snakes will all go away, and that's great, because then you can go running around and not worry about getting bit by a snake. And the other thing is like there are rocks that you climb on, and you have to watch out, because those snakes live in those rocks and you don't want to get bit. But if it's pretty cold, there's no snakes. It doesn't have to be cold, like you can run around in a sweater. But because snakes are cold-blooded, for them to get up and out and moving, they'll come out in the middle of the winter. It's too warm here in the South for them to just go away all winter. They will come out, but only when it's really warm. And they have to sun themselves first and warm up before they get going. So that's great. And you can climb on rocks. You can play when it's a little bit cool and not have to worry about snakes. So I love it, the fact that snakes are cold-blooded. I would hate it if they were warm-blooded. It could just bite you year-round, and year-round you have to worry about it. My roommate in college was from South Carolina, and you know, snakes are a problem over there too, and she got bit by a rattlesnake on her arm when she was a little girl out in her yard, and she says she had blocked it out. She didn't remember it, but that she was about 5 years old, and she says she does remember being in the yard and feeling something and thinking that she had been hit by a stick or something. But after that, she has erased the memory. But her parents say she went into the living room, started spinning around, and collapsed. And they saw the bite on her arm and rushed her to the hospital, saved her life with the anti-venom, got her quick enough, but she got a full rattlesnake bite on her arm. But this was the interesting thing. All the way, that was when she was 5. When we were in college, you could see where the bite was. You see the fang marks. She had the scars on her arm. It was very interesting. And you know, if it was a comic book, she would have had superpowers, but she didn't. That I knew of. Maybe she did. And I was one of the ones she was keeping her superpowers from. But we were roommates. She was head cheerleader. I was co-captain. And she had been bit by a rattlesnake when she was 5. I'll tell you one more snake story while we're here. Also here in Dallas, where I live, in Georgia, in a neighborhood, not my neighborhood, on the other side of town, there was a friend of mine lived there, and a little kid ran to go swinging, and you know how kids will back up to a swing set? They'll go toward it butt first, because they want to scoot back and get their hiney on the swing and then start swinging. Well, this kid did this, backing up butt first to sit on the swing and go swinging, and there was a copperhead in the swing sunning itself, and they got bit, because of course you sit on a copperhead, you're gonna get bit. But they were able to get the kid to the hospital fast enough. It was a neighbor of my friend's, and she, like, the mom yelled, "Will you watch the other kids?" And she took the kid straight on to the hospital. The kid ended up being okay, but they got bit by a copperhead. So anyway, that's a good reason to have outdoor cats. They will keep the snake population down, because they will kill the little things that the snakes want to eat, and they'll kill little snakes even. So Cats. You should like them. They're good for to have outdoor and keep the snakes away. Cats. Better than snakes. That could be the slogan for selling cats. Cats. Better than snakes. But snakes are important too. They're an important part of the ecosystem. But you just got to watch out for the poisonous ones. And not all snakes are poisonous. A lot of them are not. And they're an important part of the ecosystem. So we don't hate all snakes. Let's see. Birds are our next one we're going to talk about. Birds are warm-blooded. So finally we've gotten to a more complex animal. Birds have light bones. They have air pockets in them to make them light enough to fly. Birds fly. But well, not all birds fly. There are flightless birds, like ostriches. But they have feathers. They lay eggs like reptiles. Reptiles are male and female. They mate. They lay eggs. Their eggs are leathery, not like a bird egg. They don't have a hard shell. They have a leathery shell. One time we were out digging in the yard and for a garden, and we found a bunch of little leathery eggs, and we put them in a jar to see what would come out, and it was a little bitty lizard. It was so cute, and went running off. It was so, I mean, it was 1 inch big. It was really cool watching it hatch, and then we let it go because we figured we didn't know what to feed it and we didn't want to kill it. But that was real fun. So if you ever find any, I mean, it could have been a bad snake, but it wasn't. I mean, I guess there's people who can identify eggs, but it wasn't me. I just put it in a jar and we let it hatch. Figured if it was a rattlesnake or something, that we'd just throw that jar away. One time a rattlesnake got in my mom's house, and it was a baby rattlesnake, and it was in the basement, and it was kind of cute. It would go with its mouth, and then it'd shake its little tail, but it didn't have any rattles, but it'd shake its tail and hiss at you. And my mom took a 2x4 and killed it. You're not supposed to kill good snakes, but rattlesnakes, feel free. Kill those snakes, I say. My personal opinion, you do what you want. But rattlesnakes are dangerous, and the babies are dangerous too. So you can die from being bit by a baby snake. A while ago here in Georgia, there was a boy who went fishing, and he thought he had worms, and he had baby cottonmouth snakes, and they bit him and killed him. So gotta watch out. We have a lot of snakes. All these people who aren't in the South are going, I'm never going there. They got all kinds of poisonous snakes. Yes, we do. Yes, we do. One time I had a cottonmouth. Yeah, I was on a horse, and I had a horse, and I was riding the horse, and there was a snake there in the pasture, and my horse reared up. Horses, of course, are afraid of snakes, and bucked me off. So I go falling. I almost fall right on top of the cottonmouth snake. And I was like, wow, I almost lay on that snake. And so I'm still trying to, but as I stand up, then the snake's not too happy that I'm there, and he turns around and and you can see the cottonmouth. I was like, and then he slithers on over, and there was a creek right there, and he jumped in the creek and then swam away. I was like, But anyway, I almost got bucked off a horse onto a cottonmouth. So, but I didn't get bit. But my friend Bonnie, she got bit. Okay, so back to the birds. They're warm-blooded. They can fly. You're going to do a lab this week where you're going to look at feathers. So you're going to need to go outside and find feathers, or you can buy them at Hobby Lobby. You can buy a bag of feathers. But you're going to need some feathers. Now, word of warning, feathers can have disease. So if you go outside and get feathers, you need to wear gloves, or you need to wash your hands. You need to be careful. When I was a kid, we used to pick up feathers. We'd pretend like they were our pins. We'd probably even stick them in our mouths and stick them in our hair. We didn't worry about feathers at all. But now there are some diseases here in America that can be carried by birds, and you have to be a little careful with feathers. So just a little disclaimer there. Be careful with feathers. Don't put them in your mouth. Wash your hands. But you're going to be looking at them under a lens and seeing the barbs, how they hold together. You know how feathers are like all together, and then you take them and you stick them with your finger, and they get a little split, and then you try to put the split back together, and it won't. It's because of the barbs. So that's what you're going to be looking at, and you're also going to look at the down part of the feather. This week in your lab also. All right, so birds have beaks, and they are different depending on what they eat. Mammals is what you are. Mammals are warm-blooded. They're covered with hair. They produce milk to feed their young. They have male and female. The young are usually developed inside the mother's body and are not laid in eggs, but of course the duck-billed platypus is the exception. Other things, also the exception to the young in the body is possums and kangaroos, all of the pouch animals, and there's a lot besides those. They have their young, they birth them, but they're tiny, tiny, tiny and can't survive. So then they crawl into their mother's pouch and attach to their milk gland and nurse until they get big enough to finally come out. So for a field trip, you could go look at the kangaroo at the zoo. I wonder if the zoos are open again, though, because of COVID. I don't know. You might have to look at them on YouTube. This COVID, it's really interfering with field trips. We had all these field trips planned for homeschool last year that we had planned to do. We saved money to do. Everything's closed. No field trips for us. And you think, oh, I just want to go to a museum. All the museums are closed. Everything's closed because of COVID. All right. Let's see if there's anything else we need to talk about. Duck-billed platypus, they're an exception. So who you are as an animal is you are Homo sapien. Homo means man and sapien means wise. So you can tell who made the naming system. People. We made our scientific name Wise Man. That's kind of funny. All right, so you're going to read this chapter, you're going to answer the questions, you're going to do the labs, and you can do extra labs if you want to. Come back next time. That is it for Unit 2. So if you are doing Unit test, it's time for you to take a Unit 2 test. If you're doing chapter test, you can do whichever one you want. You can do chapter test or Unit test. But if you want to do Unit test, we have finished talking about the 5 kingdoms with the last unit, and now we're going to talk about body systems maintaining life. So we're going to talk about nutrition, digestion, all of this, the body systems that are part of us being complex life. We have organs, we have organ systems. So those are the things we're going to be talking about next. Then we will go on talking about more senses, more body systems. So that's really going to be the next 2 units. Then we're going to go back to plants. So what I did when I taught this is we skipped plants and went on to reproduction and then traits of living things and went back to plants, because otherwise plants was hitting right in the middle of the winter. So I might do the videos out of order, or I might do them in order and just let you change the order if you want to. So just a little look ahead of what we'll be doing. But come back next time and we'll start Unit 3. Like, share, subscribe. Science is great.